Hello there. Today I'm having a look at an area of woodland called Vinney Ridge. It's not far from Lyndhurst. It's between Lyndhurst and Burley, and it's in the fork of two roads. So you do hear traffic noise, unfortunately, but it's still an incredibly interesting area. It's got some really interesting trees. It's got pollards. It's got this oak that I've painted a couple of times. It's bent down into an arch, and there's not another tree really like that in the New Forest. This is the painting I did in the autumn when there were pigs around. Vinney Ridge is an area that must have been exploited in the past for sand or gravel, because there are old workings which have actually added to the character of the woodland. Here you see the old workings. There must have been quite a few years ago, because some of the trees growing out of the banks of the workings are at least 150, 200 years old. I've done a bit of research, but I can't find out really whether it's sand or gravel. But looking at this old tree stump plate, you can see that the roots have been into virtually pure sand. So I tend to think it might be sand workings. They would have been done by individuals, a couple of people with horse and cart. There's no heavy machinery. It's a very good place to come and do a little painting, and that was my intention today. You can always find a little study of an old tree root with the mosses, or as they're called, bryophytes, and the leaves. This time of the year, if you get the light right, it can be really quite interesting, because these trees come out at odd angles, and it's what nature does if left to itself. And I think that's what makes the New Forest rather interesting, is trees are allowed to fall down, and if they haven't been completely dead, they start growing again in other shapes. And there's not many places in England where trees are allowed to do what comes naturally to them. Like this oak tree that's fallen down, it's put up quite a few trunks, which adds a lot of interest and character to a place. Now in this part of Vinney Ridge, you've got the big beech pollards, and many years ago there was one of the largest heronries in the New Forest, and there was hundreds of herons would roost in these big beech trees, and there was 3 little streams that they could hunt for food very close by. You see, but unfortunately tourists used to pull off the road here before it was fenced, and you notice some of the graffiti is 1965 on that tree there, and it sort of predates the fencing of the road. Down here, actually, quite unusual, there's a modern one, 2020. It's one of those things that shouldn't really be done. It's quite rare to find a modern one today. Anyway, these beech trees have stood here for a few hundred years, and they were home to this large heronry. But the tourists used to like to tap the trees and frighten them into the air, because it was such a spectacle. And that's one of the reasons there aren't any herons here now. Anyway, I'll leave these large beeches and move back to where I was going to do a little painting. One or two of my friends are painting in the same vicinity. We're well spaced. Well, I've decided on my subject. It's this little beech tree here. It's got a nice little root system, and it's got a sort of an unusual sort of leaning round shape, which I rather like, and the light is catching it nicely. Well, I don't know how far I'll get with the sketch. I've spent more time videoing than I have painting. Still, I might come back and finish it off, or perhaps finish it in the studio. Now here's a nice watercolour that my friend Alan Langford has done, and I think he's made a very good start. Obviously there's a lot more work to go. Anyway, if you enjoyed this little trip in the forest, please click a like or subscribe. Goodbye for now.